2, 1. I got a streaming key problem, I think. All right, let's get started here. Hey friends, Ernie here. And this is the 0 Days to Expiration podcast, episode number 72. 72 episodes. There are 71 other, no, I'm sorry, there are 70 other episodes because there is the missing number 70 episode. Where did it go? It may show up sooner or later. But today's episode is about asymmetry. Well, the title of the episode may be a little bit misleading because if you didn't understand what I was saying, the metaphor that I use to pin the tail on the donkey, then you may not understand what asymmetry is all about just from that context. Of course, pin the tail on the donkey harkens back to when we were children and we went to a friend's birthday party, and one of the games that the parents set up was pin the tail on the donkey. So you would take a picture of a donkey's behind and you would tape it up to a wall or maybe a tree, anywhere. And then all the kids would take turns and you would blindfold a child and then give them a little tail, a cutout tail with a pin, a little push pin or something. You'd spin them around and then point them in the general direction of the donkey that's taped up on the tree and let them go. And their task was to, if they could, if their bearings were quite right, if they had some sort of innate sense or psychic sense, they would try to pin the tail right on the donkey. Now, obviously, odds were that they were not going to get it, and that's the whole purpose of the game. There was a small chance that one of those kids would actually pin the tail directly, and the way it really worked is everybody won. Everybody got a consolation prize, but whoever came closest got the big prize, whatever that was. Maybe a toy, maybe a candy, who knows? So what that's really saying is that there is a big prize to be won, and the odds of getting it are relatively small. But the risk that you take is having fun. So there really isn't any risk per se. So pinning the tail on the donkey also refers to, or pinning refers to a term in options trading that deals with the butterfly or other types of trades where you hit the target right on the spot. In the case of a butterfly, we have an expiration P&L diagram that kind of looks like a pyramid. And when we say pin that trade, we mean that the price in the market ended up right at the apex P&L chart, which actually represents the two short strikes in a butterfly strategy. And the reason why that is so important is that when you pin something right on those short strikes at expiration, you are maximizing your profit. You're maximizing the fun. Now, the cool part about all of this is that even if you don't pin it exactly, if you come anywhere close to it, the chances are that you're going to make a great deal of profit relative to the risk that you put on. Now, a lot of people use the butterfly strategy, the butterfly strategy as a market neutral device, and they will put the strategy on at the money and then hope that price stays there. Now, when you do that, you don't create such a great risk to reward. And this is what asymmetry is all about. You want to create asymmetry in your position. And there are a lot of reasons for this, but let's just stick with the whole idea first. Now, an asymmetric trade would be one where your risk is far less than the potential reward. If you do it at the money, the chances are that you're not going to have that kind of asymmetry in your favor. It's going to be against you, where the potential reward is relatively small to the risk. And I don't know, who wants to play that game? What fun would that be at a party that if you lose, then you get, I don't know, jeered by your friends? That's no fun. You at least want some consolation prizes, you know, a little grab bag or a party bag or something that you take away, right? And so it is with trading as well. You want to have some kind of consolation if you don't pin. And that's one of the benefits of trading asymmetric strategies. Sure, you're going after the lower probability event where you pin it and make tremendous profit, but if you come short, you still do okay. And if you become completely delusional, completely lost, and you miss the entire P&L tent of the butterfly, the worst that's going to happen is that you're going to experience a very, very, very tiny loss, if anything. That is asymmetry. Now let's put this into numbers. In the 0 DTE strategy that we practice here at 0 days to expiration, we never put on a trade unless it has at least a 1 to 5 risk to reward or potential reward. So in other words, for every dollar of risk that we take on, we're going for a $5 potential profit. Sometimes, and that's the minimum. Often we are looking at a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 15 or even a 1 to 20 risk to reward. And the way that we do this using the butterfly is that we treat it as a directional strategy and we push it out of the money when we take that position. So that when you do that, your risk is very small compared to your profit. Now, there are a lot of benefits of doing this. One is that you can make profit without actually ever entering the profit tent. The nature of a butterfly and the profit curve are such that it extends well beyond the break-even points at expiration of the butterfly. And so even if you just come close to the butterfly during that trading day, during that 0 DTE day, there's a very good chance that you're going to be in profit. So even if you're not close to pinning, or even if you're not under the profit tent at all, you still get a consolation prize. Now, if you move away from it, again, you set it up in such a way that the profit's very small. Now, the benefit of this is that this creates a trading environment, a trading atmosphere, where there's little to lose and a whole lot to gain. When you trade this way, when you put on small bets for the chance of making a very large score, you don't have to have too many winners before you start doing well. And even when your almost wins or near wins are still multiples of what you risk, you're doing okay. So in most cases, you could literally have less than a 50% win rate and still do fantastically. Now, what we've found is that we can get somewhere near the pin trade, where we pin the tail on the donkey, about 10 to 15% of the time. So 10 or 15% of the time, we're making 400, 500, 1,000% on our risk. The rest of the time, we're making some spectrum between that and at minimum, I would say. Most of our trades, if you were to take all of the trades in combination over the past 10 months that we've been in operation, we average about 150 to 250% on the risk that we take. Sure, there are losers in there. Depending on the amount of volatility that's in the market, our win rate would fluctuate, but so does the opportunity. And our win rate will fluctuate anywhere from what we've experienced as a high back last summer when volatility was relatively elevated, as it is now. Our win rate was anywhere from 85 to 95%. And our ability to hit the pin was way over 10%. In fact, there was a stretch for about 6 weeks where we were pinning the tail on the donkey. I love saying that. We were doing that once a week, or 33%. That's outrageous. And then, of course, we didn't expect that to continue. But that's the benefit of having a higher volatility environment. That allows us to create much wider spreads on the butterfly and have them relatively close to us because of that wideness, and giving us a greater probability of profit. So overall, it's a better environment. You would think that, man, higher volatility, that sounds scary. It sounds like very difficult to manage. However, in the environment of the zero DTE and premium collection and using the butterfly, it actually creates a superior environment. When we have very little volatility, we are unable to get the kind of risk to reward that we want. So we have to create narrower spreads and push them further away, decreasing our probability of profit. So the ability to profit is inversely proportional to the amount of implied volatility that's out in the market. Now, of course, there are a lot of other factors that come to play here. And in the past 3 weeks, up until just recently, we've had relatively low volatility and then medium volatility, but we were having an unusual market where premium was suppressed. And it's hard to explain, but it was a difficult market to trade. But we get through those because we know that as long as we trade small, that even sustained opportunities that don't pan out don't really hurt us. And again, that is the beauty of asymmetry. If you watch the movie The Big Short, and I know a lot of you probably have, but if you haven't, I would recommend it very highly. It's all about how some people took advantage of some knowledge, some specialized knowledge they had during the housing crisis, during the great crash of 2008, 2009, where they recognized that there was going to be a complete crash in the housing and mortgage industry. They found ways to take advantage of that by putting on asymmetric trades, where they would bet a small amount of money that would explode into huge gains. There was one set of actors or protagonists that are in the movie, and they discovered that there was something wrong with the housing market. And prior to doing that, though, they had built up their own fund using this asymmetry idea. They started literally in their garage with $100,000. I think it was actually $140,000, and they turned it into $30 million by making asymmetric bets. So all they would do is find companies that were apparently undervalued, and they felt that they had a good long-term story, and so they would make these small bets on these companies by buying something called leaps, which are essentially options that are dated way out into the future. And so these options would cost them very little money, but if they hit, they would return massive returns. So they were able to come into the 2008 debacle, and then they found this opportunity where they could make another asymmetric bet and parlay all this money that they made using their asymmetric strategy into another grander asymmetric strategy, where they took their $30 million and turned it into, well, nearly $500 million. Now, that is the power of asymmetry. And that's what we do 3 days a week. We are putting on asymmetric trades that are taking advantage of this property, that we do not have to win all the time. But when we do, if we miss the pin, the tail on the donkey, we still have an opportunity to make as much as 150, 200% on our trade. And as an options trader, wouldn't you love to be able to say that? Because I know that most options traders are struggling to make 25, 30, 50% on their trades. Most spreads provide the opportunity to maybe make 50%. Very few have asymmetry like that. Particularly with other zero DTE strategies, they do something very different, where we're taking, say, on average, a 1 to 10 risk to reward. They are doing something completely the opposite. They feel that it's necessary to put on very wide spreads, usually using an iron condor, where the risk to reward, the probability may be high, but the risk to reward, instead of being 1 to 10, is 10 to 1. So where they're using $1,000 to make $100, we use $100 to potentially make $1,000. And quite frankly, as it turns out, our win rates aren't all that different. So imagine that. We're using this asymmetrical approach where our win rates are very close to what they're using, yet we use 1/10 the capital to make 10 times the profit. And in fact, it's actually more than 10 times. It's closer to 20 times because of the gamma risk that they experience in those trades. They cannot reliably go after 100% of the profit. In fact, that's a wish or a dream. That is the ideal trade. And so what they do to manage the potential of risk of ruin or going to that max huge loss is that they'll only go after 50% of the profit. So as soon as they get 50%, they get out. So in other words, instead of 10%, they're going after 5%. So they'll use $1,000 to go after $50, where we use that $100 to go after 1,000. So we are literally 20 times different than they are, 20 times more comfortable in our risk positions. And this has an important benefit. And the benefit really is that there's no anxiety. There's no stress. Pretty much easygoing. We do not belabor our positions. We're not worried about stopping out. So a completely different environment. And because of that, because you're not experiencing that FOMO or that fear or even greed at some points, you can make better decisions. So we have a better environment, better risk to reward, better returns, more amenable to our own personal psyche, making overall the zero-DTE way of trading, last day of expiration on the S&P, whether it's the SPX or the E-mini futures, far more palatable and more enjoyable and very profitable. You can try out zero-DTE by going zero-DTE.com/try and try out for 4 weeks. That'll give you enough time to understand the strategy. And then if you would like to join us, you'll become a full member for those 4 weeks. You'll get an education like no other.
New visitor.
And if you enjoy what you're doing there, then I will rebate the cost of the trial. Got to turn off all these announcements. I will rebate the cost of the trial when you become a member. So essentially making the trial free. That's okay too. What you will get, though, for that 4 weeks, for that small amount of money, is a tremendous education and a strategy that I'm sure that you can make use of. The benefit of staying is that we are focused, and I am focused, on providing coaching and mentoring to people. So it's more than just a strategy. It's an entire system, a trading system. Asymmetry. Everything that we do is built around asymmetry, and it borrows a lot from the philosophy that is expressed extremely well in Nassim Taleb's 2 books that are based on asymmetry. The first is The Black Swan, and everybody, I think, understands what a black swan event. That is certainly an asymmetrical event if you're going after huge returns and you don't really know when that black swan is going to occur. You can lay foundational bets that sort of like landmines waiting for it to happen. But Nassim Taleb built a 9-figure hedge fund based on asymmetrical bets. And then his other book, Skin in the Game, A Life of Asymmetry. I think those are two great books that you should probably read and get a better understanding of what asymmetric opportunities are all about. That's today's podcast. I thank you very much for joining me and talking about asymmetry and the wonders of it and why it is so important to us in our trading and why it makes this trading strategy, this system, in my view, the best day trading, the best trading strategy, quite frankly, that I know of. And that's it. Oh, we might have, excuse me, we might have a question here. I got to increase it here so I can see. Hi, Ernie. Can you talk about what happened last week when certainly my other investments suffered a lot, and I understand from your last video you had a bad day. What happened last week? The past couple of weeks in the market have been really trying. Our analysis of where price would go has been spot on. The problem with that is that, yes, the price went to where we thought it was going to go, but almost every day we were getting these reversals. So it would go there and then reverse. And so, of course, timing in a 0 DTE trade is very important because you're trying to collect premium, and premium is a time-based thing. You collect more premium the longer you can stay in that trade. Now, it doesn't do you any good if you get to where you want to go, but the premium hasn't collected yet or hasn't filtered out into your account yet. And then if it reverses, then you're left holding the bag. So you're left with having to take those small asymmetric losses. So that has been an unusual occurrence that seems to be specific to this period of time. This beginning of January, actually it started really in the holiday week between Christmas and New Year's and the first couple of weeks of January, where there is a lot of turmoil in the market. And I think a lot of it was set up really because of the actions of the Federal Reserve and what they've created, this dramatic uncertainty in the market. You go and look at any of these major institutions, banks are saying that they believe that the market's going to correct 20%, but big investment houses like Goldman Sachs thinks the market is going straight up. So which is it? This is the confusion that lays in the market, and that is being played out, or was being played out every day. Now that we've had the Fed come out and say definitively what they plan on doing, there's going to be a lot more certainty in the market. And even though the market didn't really enjoy what they had to say, that we can expect some rate hikes in the near future, and along with that, some tapering of their quantitative easing. Both of those things are things that probably upset most institutions and a lot of investment houses. Historically, when the Federal Reserve goes on a rate hike program, the market responds initially with kind of a pullback, but then a huge bull run. So that's actually what I'm expecting. I'm expecting more pullback for the time being, and then a buy the dip opportunity and a long bull run. So we will shed the uncertainty that we experienced over the past 3 weeks. And by the way, those 3 weeks were really, we've been in operation now for about 45 weeks, and we've only had 5 losing weeks, of which 3 of them were combined in those last 3 weeks in that uncertainty. But now that everything, the air is cleared and we're back into the swing of things and the volatility has returned, the Fed has set the direction, we can expect, I think, incredible times ahead. And the beautiful part about all this, again, when you reflect back to the asymmetry, when you're trading very small, you can weather periods like that very easily. And in fact, we had a fantastic win yesterday where we pinned the trade where some people could have made as much as 800% on their returns. I think some people, a lot of traders, were just happy to make any returns and maybe got out a little bit early. It was indicative and telling about how things now have changed. And so now, business as usual, going forward, it's going to be great. All right, there we go. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Peace. Tomorrow's a 0DTE day. Take care. Where's that button? I was doing so well trying to find that off. There it is.